The night shift. If you've ever walked through a hospital after midnight, you already know it doesn't feel the same. The noise of the day fades, the halls grow still, and the smell of bleach and antiseptic clings to the air like something alive. But here's the secret nurses never say out loud. Once the clock passes 2 a.m., the hospital changes. And the stories I'm about to share, they come straight from those who've lived them. Nurses, doctors, and patients who swear that sometimes the dead don't stay gone. So dim the lights, put your headphones on, and whatever you do, don't listen alone. The first story comes from a nurse named Claire. It was her second month working the night shift in a small town hospital. She was assigned to a patient who was recovering after surgery. Around 2:45 a.m., she entered his room to check his vitals. He was staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, whispering something under his breath. Claire leaned closer and asked, "Are you all right?" The man slowly turned his head toward her and said, "Do you see them?" Claire froze. "See who?" she asked. And that's when the patient raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the corner of the room. She followed his gaze. The corner looked empty, just shadows pooling under the dim yellow light. But then she noticed. The shadows weren't still. They were moving, shifting, almost like they were breathing. Her skin crawled. She blinked hard, and just like that, the corner was empty again. When she turned back to the patient, he was gone. His chest still, his eyes still open. He had passed, while pointing at something only he could see. Claire never forgot that night, and she never worked in that room again. Now let's move to another hospital, another shift. There's a superstition among nurses. If you hear a code being called on a patient who isn't in the building, don't answer it. Sounds crazy, right? But listen to this. One ER nurse, James, was sitting at the station when the intercom suddenly buzzed. "Code blue, room 6. Code blue, room 6. James and two others sprinted down the hall. But when they burst into room 6, they found it empty. The bed was neatly made, the lights off. Nobody had been assigned there for weeks. Confused, they went back to the station to check the log, and that's when one of the senior nurses spoke up. She said calmly, "Room 6 doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down after the fire." A chill ran down James's spine. He swore he'd heard the code clear as day. But the older nurse, she just nodded and said, "That room still calls for help, every few months." Now imagine this. You're running full speed, adrenaline pumping, thinking you're about to save a life, only to realize the patient never existed. Or maybe they still do, just not in this world. But sometimes the terror doesn't come from a voice or a flickering light, but from footsteps. One nurse recalled sitting at the ER desk at 3 a.m. She heard footsteps in the hall, steady, heavy boots echoing closer. She turned, expecting to see a doctor or security guard, but no one appeared. The footsteps stopped right behind her chair. She spun around. Nothing, just the long, empty corridor. She tried to laugh it off, until the sound started again. This time, walking away, slowly, into the distance. Later, when she told a colleague, they shrugged and said, "Oh, that's just the orderly. He used to patrol these halls years ago, before he hanged himself in the stairwell." Now tell me, if you were working alone at 3 a.m. and you heard boots behind you, would you turn around? Or would you just keep your eyes down, hoping they passed you by? Here's another. In one hospital, the morgue was located in the basement, just past the laundry room. New nurses hated doing runs down there because they swore the elevators acted strange. One nurse said she was delivering paperwork to the morgue at 4 a.m. She got in the elevator, pressed the button for the basement, and the doors closed. But instead of going down, the elevator went up, all the way to the top floor. When the doors slid open, the hall was pitch black, no lights, no staff, just darkness. And standing at the far end of the hallway was a figure, too far to see clearly, but close enough to know it was watching her. She panicked, hitting the button for the basement again. The doors closed, and she prayed. When they opened, she was in the basement like she was supposed to be. She handed over the paperwork with trembling hands. The morgue attendant looked at her and asked, "Did the elevator take you to the 7th floor?" She froze. "How did you know?" The attendant just sighed. "Happens sometimes. There is no 7th floor. Hospitals hold thousands of souls, and some of them don't move on. Like the man in black. Multiple patients across different hospitals have described the same figure. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black, standing silently in the corner of the room. One nurse said a patient screamed in terror, pointing at the corner. "He's here for me!" The patient begged the nurse not to let the man get closer, but the nurse saw nothing. She tried to comfort him. Minutes later, the man flatlined. That same night, another patient, different room, different floor, asked her the same thing. "Why is that man in black staring at me?" Two patients, same night, same figure, both gone before sunrise. Now think about this. Is he a shadow, a hallucination, or something darker, moving from room to room, waiting for the dying? But the scariest story might be this one. A nurse was working a quiet shift when she was asked to watch over a patient in the psychiatric ward. The patient kept muttering about the woman in white. The nurse thought it was just delusion, until she saw her. In the reflection of the window, a woman dressed in a hospital gown stood behind her, hair long, face hidden. When she spun around, the room was empty. The patient whispered, "You saw her too, didn't you?" He smiled, then began to laugh. Later, she learned the story. A patient, decades ago, a woman, had hung herself in that very room, and since then, she appears to anyone unlucky enough to stay there overnight. Some nurses refuse to even enter that room anymore. Hospitals are places of science, but no matter how many machines, wires, and alarms surround us, some things can't be explained. Ask any nurse who's worked the graveyard shift, and they'll have a story. A flickering light, a voice calling their name, a cold hand brushing their arm in an empty hallway. The truth is, hospitals are full of life and death, and when night falls, the line between the two blurs. So the next time you're in a hospital after midnight, pay attention. That soft cry in the hallway, that shadow by the elevator, that whisper you swear came from an empty bed. You might tell yourself it's nothing, but nurses know better, because the graveyard shift isn't just about the living. It's about who, or what, comes back. So what do you think? Are these just ghost stories told by tired nurses to pass the night? Or are hospitals truly haunted by the echoes of the patients who never left? Either way, when the lights flicker, when the monitors beep for no reason, when the intercom calls out to an empty room, remember this: not every patient in the hospital is alive.